Husband leaves his wife for a younger woman, leaving her with nothing, but he is shocked by what she does. Dear viewers, welcome to our channel. Subscribe to receive more stories every day. Maria sat in the living room of what had once been her dream home. The walls, once filled with laughter and love, now felt cold and hollow. The silence of the empty house pressed down on her as if mocking the shattered pieces of her life. She stared at the divorce papers in her hands, the ink still fresh from her husband David's signature. After 15 years of marriage, he had left her for a younger woman. No warning, no discussion, just a sudden decision that destroyed her world. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was financial. David, who had always controlled their finances, had left her with almost nothing. He had siphoned off the accounts, leaving only enough for her to scrape by. The house would soon belong to the bank. Her only option was to pack up and leave. But where would she go? Her family was far away, and she hadn't worked in years, putting her career aside to support David. As she stood in the middle of their once shared home, Maria felt the weight of the years she'd spent sacrificing for someone who tossed her aside as soon as something shinier came along. She began the grueling process of packing her belongings, moving from room to room. It was a strange feeling, touching the things she had accumulated over the years, knowing they no longer belonged to her. As she made her way up to the attic, a place she'd rarely visited, Maria discovered something she hadn't expected. An old dusty box buried beneath some tattered blankets and broken holiday decorations. Curiosity pulled her toward it. She set down the stack of boxes she'd been carrying and knelt by the mysterious crate. Lifting the lid, she was greeted by the scent of old paper. Inside were piles of documents, some dating back decades. Her fingers sifted through them aimlessly, ready to dismiss them as junk until something caught her eye. A yellowed contract with David's name prominently displayed at the top. Her heart skipped a beat. "What is this?" Maria whispered, squinting at the faded type. The contract was dated from years ago, long before she and David had married. She scanned the words, her pulse quickening as phrases like business venture, financial stake, and ownership rights leapt out at her. Maria's mind raced. She had known David had been involved in business deals, but he had always brushed off any questions about his finances, claiming it was too complicated to explain. Now she had proof that there was much more to the story than he had ever let on. As she continued to read, it became clear that this contract wasn't just some random piece of paperwork. It tied David to a significant financial venture, one that Maria had never heard of. The wording was legalistic and dense, but she deciphered enough to realize that David had kept something monumental hidden from her for all these years. A venture worth millions, possibly more. Her hands shook as she held the contract. Could it be possible that she had a claim to this? Had David left this behind in his haste, not realizing its importance? The idea seemed absurd, but as the weight of the paper pressed against her skin, Maria felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope. This could be her chance to reclaim her life. But first, she needed to understand exactly what she had found. With the contract clutched tightly in her hands, Maria hurried downstairs, her mind racing with possibilities. She had no idea where this journey would lead, but one thing was certain. She wasn't going to let David walk away unscathed. Maria sat at the kitchen table, the contract spread out in front of her, illuminated by the dim light of the evening sun filtering through the blinds. She had spent the last few hours rereading the document, trying to make sense of the legal jargon. It was clear that David had been involved in some kind of high-stakes business deal, but the details remained murky. One thing stood out, though. There was mention of a partner, someone Maria had never heard of before. The name Edward Hawthorne was scrawled on multiple pages of the contract, always referred to as David's business associate. Maria's mind buzzed with questions. If this deal had been so significant, why had David kept it hidden from her? And what role did Edward Hawthorne play in all of this? Maria knew she needed help. This wasn't something she could figure out on her own. She didn't have the financial or legal knowledge to decipher the full implications of the contract. But she knew someone who might, her old college friend Lauren. Lauren had become a corporate lawyer after they had drifted apart over the years, but Maria remembered how sharp and determined she had always been. Maybe Lauren could help her understand the contract, and more importantly, help her figure out if she had any legal claim to what David had kept hidden. Picking up the phone, Maria hesitated. She hadn't spoken to Lauren in years, not since her wedding to David. She had let so many friendships fall by the wayside while she focused on her marriage, putting everything and everyone else second. Would Lauren even take her call? She dialed the number, her heart pounding with uncertainty. The phone rang once, twice, then clicked. "Hello." Lauren's voice was brisk, professional. "Lauren, it's Maria. Maria Roberts," she stammered. There was a pause. Then, "Maria. Wow, it's been ages. How are you?" Maria could hear the surprise in her voice, but there was also warmth there. Relief flooded through her. Well, it's complicated," Maria said, her voice catching. "I need your help. It's about David." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. "David? What happened? Are you okay?" Lauren asked, her tone suddenly concerned. Maria explained everything. The affair, the divorce, and now the discovery of the mysterious contract. She could hear Lauren's silence growing heavier as the story unfolded. "Maria, this contract sounds like it's more than just a business deal," Lauren said when Maria had finished. "If David kept it hidden from you, there's a good chance it's tied to something big. I'm not saying you can just walk in and claim what's his, but if your name is connected to any of this, it's worth investigating." "That's what I was hoping you'd say," Maria replied, her voice steadying. "I'm not looking to take everything from him, but I need to know what he's been hiding. I can't just let him walk away after everything he's done." "I understand," Lauren said. "Send me a copy of the contract, and I'll see what I can find out. It might take some time, but I'll get to the bottom of this." Maria felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. She had been feeling so alone, but now with Lauren on her side, she didn't feel quite so helpless. "Thank you, Lauren. I don't know what I'd do without you." "Don't thank me yet," Lauren said, a hint of a smile in her voice. "Let's see what we're dealing with first." Maria hung up the phone and scanned the contract, sending it off to Lauren with a quick message. As she hit send, a sense of determination took hold of her. This wasn't just about uncovering David's secrets anymore. This was about reclaiming her life, her future. Over the next few days, Maria waited anxiously for Lauren's analysis. Every time her phone buzzed with a notification, her heart jumped. Finally, on a rainy afternoon, she got the call. "Maria." Lauren's voice was serious, almost grim. "I've looked over the contract. You're not going to believe this, but David is connected to a major real estate development, one that's about to go public. If this deal goes through, it could be worth millions. And here's the kicker. You were named as a beneficiary." Maria's breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean?" "Your name is on the contract, Maria. Legally, you're entitled to a portion of this venture, one David has been keeping hidden. I don't know if he was planning to cut you out entirely after the divorce, but right now you still have a claim. This is bigger than either of us thought." For a moment, Maria was speechless. All the years she had spent in the dark, trusting David with their finances, and he had been hiding a fortune from her. The betrayal cut even deeper than she had imagined. But now, she had something he didn't expect: leverage. "Lauren," Maria said slowly, "I want to move forward with this. Whatever it takes, I want to claim what's mine." Lauren's voice was steady. "I'm with you. We'll make sure David doesn't get away with this." Maria hung up the phone, her mind racing with possibilities. David thought he had won, but he had underestimated her. She wasn't the same woman he had abandoned. She was stronger now, and she was ready to fight. The days following Lauren's call were a whirlwind for Maria. It was as if the world around her had shifted, a curtain pulled back to reveal the true extent of David's deception. The contract she had found was only the beginning. Lauren, true to her word, had started digging deeper into the financial trail, uncovering more hidden documents that pointed to a series of questionable deals. Maria's emotions oscillated between anger and determination. Every new revelation about David's secret life left her stunned. He had built a facade of a caring husband while engaging in shady business deals behind her back. Each piece of evidence felt like another knife twisting in her gut, but it also fueled her resolve. One morning, Maria received an unexpected text from Lauren. "We need to meet in person. I found something you should see." They agreed to meet at a quiet cafe downtown. As Maria approached the table where Lauren sat waiting, the weight of what was happening pressed down on her. Lauren had been her rock through this whole ordeal, but the look on her face today was different. Serious, even concerned. "Hey!" Maria greeted her, trying to sound composed as she sat down. Lauren offered a tight smile in return. "Maria, I've been digging through more of David's financial records. It's worse than we thought." She slid a folder across the table. "You need to see this." Maria opened the folder, her heart racing. Inside were copies of bank transfers, investment portfolios, and emails between David and his mysterious business associate, Edward Hawthorne. The numbers were staggering. Millions of dollars being funneled through shell companies, investments in offshore accounts. And there, at the bottom of the stack, was something that made Maria's blood run cold. A wire transfer to a private account, labeled with David's name and Edward Hawthorne's initials. She blinked, her stomach twisting. Wait, are you saying David and Edward are working together? Lauren nodded, her expression grim. Yes, they've been in business for years, siphoning money into offshore accounts. And here's the kicker. They set up this account to cut you out entirely. The money that should have been legally yours from the business ventures. They planned to move it offshore, and you'd never see a cent. Maria's mind raced. David had planned everything. The affair, the divorce, the financial maneuvering. It was all a calculated strategy to leave her with nothing. He had never intended for her to be a part of his future. But now she had the evidence, and that changed everything. Lauren continued. But there's more. Edward Hawthorne is not just a business associate. He's been tied to a series of corporate frauds, and his involvement with David could expose them both to criminal charges. Maria's breath caught in her throat. Criminal charges. This was far beyond anything she had imagined. Her thoughts spiraled. David, the man she had once loved, was now entangled in something that could destroy not only his reputation but his entire future. And she held the key to it all. Lauren leaned forward, her voice low. We can take this to court, Maria. We have enough evidence to not only reclaim what's yours but to ruin David's entire scheme. He'll never see it coming. Maria sat back, the gravity of the situation settling in. She had come to terms with David's betrayal on an emotional level, but now it was time to confront him in the real world. The world of law, money, and power. The stakes were higher than she had ever imagined, but for the first time in a long time, she felt in control. Let's do it, Maria said, her voice steady. I'm ready. The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings, document filings, and sleepless nights. Maria worked closely with Lauren, gathering everything they needed to build a solid case against David. They had to act quickly, knowing that if David or Edward suspected anything, they would move the money before she had a chance to claim it. But Maria wasn't the same woman she had been when David left her. She wasn't going to let fear or uncertainty paralyze her anymore. This time she was the one in control. One evening, as she sat at her kitchen table reviewing the latest legal paperwork, a text came through from Lauren. It's time. The papers are filed. He'll be served tomorrow. Maria's heart raced. Tomorrow everything would change. She had no idea how David would react, but she was ready for whatever came next. The following day, Maria waited anxiously at home. She knew the moment had come when her phone rang. It was David. What the hell is this? David's voice was furious, filled with the venom she had once feared but now barely registered. David, Maria said calmly. I know everything. The contract, the offshore accounts, the business deals you've been hiding from me. It's over. There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end of the line, followed by a sharp intake of breath. You have no idea what you're talking about, David growled. You're making a huge mistake. No, David, Maria interrupted, her voice unwavering. The only mistake was trusting you. I've filed for my legal claim to everything you tried to hide. You can either cooperate or you can go down with Edward. The choice is yours. David's silence was deafening, and Maria could almost hear his mind racing, trying to figure out how to salvage the situation. Finally he spoke, his tone colder than ever. You'll regret this, Maria. I doubt it, she said softly, then hung up the phone, her hand steady. For the first time in months, Maria felt truly free. As the days passed, Maria prepared herself for the legal battle ahead. David, once so arrogant and untouchable, was now scrambling to keep his secret life from unraveling. Lauren had informed Maria that David and Edward were likely trying to move the funds before the court could freeze the accounts, but Maria remained one step ahead, thanks to the meticulous evidence they had gathered. The moment the court documents were served, everything moved into overdrive. David had hired a high-powered attorney to fight Maria's claim, and the courtroom battle was destined to be long and drawn out. But what David didn't anticipate was Maria's resilience. Each day, she walked into the courtroom with her head held high, never once wavering under the weight of the legal assault David tried to mount against her. For Maria, this fight wasn't just about the money or the business. It was about reclaiming her dignity, her sense of self-worth. David had underestimated her strength, assuming she would fade into the background, broken by his betrayal. But Maria wasn't broken. She was building herself back, piece by piece, stronger than ever. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling day in court, Maria sat in Lauren's office reviewing the latest developments. Lauren's eyes sparkled with excitement as she handed Maria another document. "This just came through," Lauren said, her voice laced with anticipation. "It's a financial report from one of David's shell companies. We've been following the money trail, and look what we found. David tried to hide nearly $1 million in this account just last week. But here's the kicker. He didn't know we'd already filed the paperwork to freeze his assets. The money's locked down. He can't touch it." Maria's pulse quickened as she read the report. David had been so confident in his deception, but now he was trapped, cornered by his own greed. He had no idea that his attempt to outmaneuver her had backfired. Lauren smiled. "We've got him, Maria. He can't escape this." A sense of vindication flooded through Maria. After all the pain David had caused, the lies, the manipulation, this was her moment. But there was still one final piece of the puzzle left to resolve. Edward Hawthorne. Edward had remained in the shadows throughout the entire ordeal. His involvement in David's schemes clear, but his direct role elusive. Maria couldn't shake the feeling that Edward had been pulling strings behind the scenes, manipulating David as much as he had her. If they could expose Edward's role, it could bring everything crashing down for both of them. "We need to go after Edward," Maria said firmly. "He's the key to this whole thing. If we can prove his involvement, it won't just ruin David. It will destroy Edward's entire operation." Lauren nodded. "I've been working on that. I have a contact in law enforcement who's been following Edward's activities for a while now. He's known for being slippery, but with the evidence we have, we can finally bring him down." Over the next few days, Maria and Lauren worked tirelessly to connect the final dots. Their investigation led them to a network of offshore accounts, shady business associates, and corporate fraud that spanned multiple countries. Edward had been running a criminal enterprise for years, and David had been just one of his many pawns. The breakthrough came when Lauren received a tip from her contact. Edward was planning to flee the country. They had a narrow window to act before he disappeared for good. It was a race against time. The following morning, Maria received a call from Lauren. "It's happening. They're going to arrest Edward today." Maria's heart pounded. She knew this moment was critical, the final step in her journey to reclaim everything David and Edward had stolen from her. She arrived at the courthouse just in time to see the commotion unfold. News reporters gathered outside, their cameras trained on the entrance as law enforcement officers escorted a man in handcuffs, Edward Hawthorne. Maria watched as Edward was led into the courthouse, his face a mixture of rage and fear. For a man who had built an empire on lies and deception, this was the end of the line. But for Maria, it was a new beginning. The courtroom was filled with tension as the final hearing approached. David sat at the defendant's table, his once confident demeanor shattered. He had lost control of the narrative, and the weight of his crimes bore down on him. Maria sat across from him, calm but resolute. She had spent months preparing for this moment, and now it was time to finish what she had started. As the judge called the case to order, Lauren rose to present their final piece of evidence, a detailed account of David and Edward's business dealings, complete with a financial trail that proved their intent to defraud Maria. The courtroom was silent as Lauren laid out the facts, each revelation hitting David like a blow. But then, something unexpected happened. As Lauren was about to conclude her statement, a man entered the courtroom, whispering something to the judge. The judge frowned, then addressed the room. "There has been a new development in this case. We will take a short recess." Maria's heart skipped a beat. What was happening? She exchanged a confused glance with Lauren, who seemed just as bewildered. They stepped outside the courtroom to wait, their nerves on edge. After what felt like an eternity, they were called back inside. The judge's expression was unreadable as he addressed the court. "It has come to my attention that an additional financial account tied to this case has surfaced. This account, recently discovered, is registered under both Mr. David Roberts and Mrs. Maria Roberts." Maria's eyes widened. What was he talking about? "The amount in this account," the judge continued, "is substantial, totaling over $50 million. It appears that Mr. Roberts had been planning to transfer these funds to an offshore account without Mrs. Roberts' knowledge. A stunned silence filled the room. Maria could barely process what she was hearing. $50 million. She had known David was hiding money, but not like this. The sheer scale of his betrayal was staggering. The judge's voice broke through her thoughts. Mrs. Roberts, due to the nature of this discovery, you are entitled to half of these funds, per the terms of your marriage and the financial agreement set forth. Additionally, the court finds Mr. Roberts guilty of financial fraud and deception. The full legal consequences will follow. Maria felt a wave of emotions crash over her. Shock, relief, disbelief. David had not only betrayed her emotionally, but he had also attempted to steal a fortune she never even knew existed. But now it was hers. Justice had been served in the most unexpected way. As the gavel struck, signaling the end of the hearing, Maria stood tall, her heart lighter than it had been in months. She had come into this fight with nothing but her will to survive. And now she was walking away with more than she had ever dreamed. David, on the other hand, was led away in handcuffs, his life in ruins. The man who had tried to take everything from her now had nothing. As Maria left the courthouse, the weight of the entire ordeal began to lift from her shoulders. The crisp autumn air filled her lungs, and for the first time in what felt like years, she felt truly free. She had won, not just in the courtroom, but in reclaiming her life and her sense of self. David's betrayal had once shattered her, but now it had forged her into something stronger. Lauren joined her on the courthouse steps, a triumphant smile on her face. Well, Maria, it's over. You did it. Maria turned to her friend, the gratitude swelling in her chest. I couldn't have done it without you, Lauren. You've been my rock through all of this. Lauren shrugged. I just did my job. You're the one who fought through it all. She paused for a moment, then added, what are you going to do now, with everything you've gained? Maria hadn't really thought about it. The revelation of the $50 million had left her reeling, but it wasn't just about the money. This was about her future, the life she could now build on her own terms. She had spent so many years defined by her marriage, by David's success, by the image of the perfect wife she had tried so hard to uphold. Now she was free to define herself, to rediscover who she was. I don't know yet, Maria admitted, a smile tugging at her lips. But I'm not in a rush to figure it all out. I think I'm going to take some time for myself. Travel, maybe. Do something I've always wanted to do but never could. Lauren nodded, her smile widening. That sounds perfect. You've earned it. Maria looked out at the city around her, feeling the possibilities stretch out before her like an open road. For so long, she had been trapped in the small world of her marriage, but now the world felt so much bigger. The idea of traveling, of seeing new places and meeting new people, excited her in a way she hadn't felt in years. It was as if a door had opened, and she could finally walk through it. As she stood there, watching the bustling city life unfold around her, Maria couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. When David had left her, she had felt like her life was over. But now she saw it was just the beginning. The betrayal that had once felt like the end of everything had become the catalyst for her transformation. She was no longer the woman who had been abandoned. She was someone new, someone stronger, someone in control of her own destiny. Over the next few months, Maria began rebuilding her life with a newfound sense of freedom. She sold the old house where she and David had shared their life together, moving into a modern apartment in the city. She reconnected with old friends, rekindling relationships that she had once let fall to the wayside. Every day felt like a fresh start, and Maria embraced it wholeheartedly. But as she settled into her new life, something unexpected happened. She began receiving strange emails. At first, they were just odd messages from unknown senders, cryptic and vague. Then, one morning, a single message arrived that stopped her cold. The email was from an address she didn't recognize, but the subject line read, Edward Hawthorne. Her heart skipped a beat as she opened it. The message was short, but it sent chills down her spine. You think it's over, but it's not. You've made powerful enemies. We're not finished yet. Maria's breath caught in her throat. Edward had been arrested. His business dealings exposed. He was supposed to be in prison along with David. But this email felt like a warning, a threat. Was it really from Edward? Or was there someone else involved, someone she hadn't uncovered? She forwarded the email to Lauren, who immediately contacted law enforcement. But as the days went by, the mystery deepened. No trace of the sender could be found, and the email address had been deactivated within minutes of the message being sent. Whoever had sent it didn't want to be found. Despite the unsettling feeling the email left her with, Maria refused to let it control her life. She had come too far to let fear rule her again. She continued moving forward, planning her future with determination. But in the back of her mind, the warning lingered. One evening, as she was packing for a trip to Italy, her first solo adventure, Maria received a knock on her door. She opened it to find a delivery man holding a package. "Ms. Roberts?" he asked. "Yes, that's me," Maria replied, signing for the package. She didn't recognize the sender's name, but it was marked as urgent. Curiosity piqued. She brought the box inside and opened it carefully. Inside was a single object, an ornate, old-fashioned key, attached to a handwritten note. The note simply read, "This isn't over. The truth will find you." Maria stared at the key in disbelief, her mind racing. What did this mean? Was it connected to Edward? Or was this another part of David's deception that she hadn't uncovered? The mystery deepened, and Maria knew that her journey wasn't over yet. But instead of feeling fear, she felt a spark of excitement. Whatever the truth was, she would find it. She had come too far to back down now. The final chapter of this story hadn't been written yet, and Maria was determined to uncover every last secret. She held the key in her hand, a new sense of purpose filling her. Her life had been turned upside down once, but now she was ready for whatever came next. Maria's story was far from over. She had faced betrayal, deceit, and loss, but she had emerged stronger, ready to face whatever the future held. As she embarked on her journey to uncover the final pieces of the puzzle, she knew one thing for certain. No matter what challenges lay ahead, she was no longer the woman who had been abandoned and broken. She was a woman who had rebuilt her life, who had found her strength, and who was ready to face the world with unshakable resolve. The truth, whatever it was, would be hers to claim. And this time, she would write her own ending. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story.